Hey, Resurrection students, it's Leah. Great to be with you again today. I've been a little obsessed with one of my favorite shows recently. I was watching an episode and I was blown away by this scene. These two teammates were rivals on the same team, and they did not like each other at all. Friendship was not likely to happen ever. But there was this one moment where these two rival teammates had in the locker room. They were on opposite sides of the locker room, and all of a sudden, one of the rivals' dad comes in and starts just tearing him apart for his performance in the game. The dad berated him, made him feel small, and even began physically abusing him before he was finally restrained and escorted out. The locker room, full of teammates, was silent for like a few seconds. And then suddenly, the other rival, who was on the far side of the room, began to walk towards the one who had been torn down and abused. And he wrapped him up in a hug and literally became a shoulder for him to cry on in his time of need. Oh, this scene, it really moved me because there are so many different situations we encounter in this world that can just tear us down and beat us up. Bullying, prejudice, not feeling worthy, isolation, depression, anxiety, and that's just to name a few. And perhaps you can relate. Perhaps you're thinking of a situation right now that is tearing you down or someone you love. You might have witnessed your friend deal with a difficult living situation. You might have seen a family deal with chronic illness or pain. Maybe you've seen someone try something and give 100% only to be beat down. Even when you might be dealing with difficult situations yourself, it can be difficult to know how to handle seeing other people go through tough times. Jesus shared a story that shows us how to handle these moments. You may recognize it. It's called the parable or story of the Good Samaritan. And when Jesus was explaining the way to know eternal life, and that's through loving God and loving our neighbor as ourselves, he was questioned about the definition of neighbor. And so he used this story to explain what being a neighbor means. So at the time, the Samaritans and the Jewish people did not associate with one another. They did not like each other, and you could say that they were rivals. In the parable, a Jewish man was stripped and beaten and robbed, left half dead lying in the street. He was ignored by a passing priest and a Levite, both of whom should have been his friends. The least likely person to help him was the Samaritan. But he was the only one who stopped, thus being a true neighbor. In Luke chapter 10, Jesus asks, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" And the expert in the law, they replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Go means go out and live your life with an open mind and an open heart for all who you might come across. It means you can't walk around so focused on you that when you see someone in pain, you step over them or walk around them. It's going with the intention of seeing the humanity of people. People in your classroom, schools, families, academic clubs, or sports teams. And to do likewise means mimicking the goodness that the Samaritan showed. It's taking the time to be inconvenienced by someone who needs your time, your care, or your resources. It's doing what you can to help. The Samaritan man took time out of his day and was so kind and gentle and even gave of his own money. Now, whether you have money to give or not, you for sure can give your time. You can share your heart. You don't always have to feel overwhelmed or too scared to act when you see someone suffering. Sometimes the best thing we can do is walk across the room, close the distance between us, and show love to someone else, whether it's a hug, meeting a material need, or just being near someone in solidarity. The story of the Good Samaritan, it teaches us to go and do likewise, even if we are called to help those in need, even if the person doesn't look like us, speak our language, or believe in our God. We're called to help, even if the person has snubbed us or hurt us, and even if they're not the cool kid, or if they act a little different than we do. We are called to help those in need, period. Because when we do that, lives are changed. The Samaritan man changed the life of the man who was bleeding and hurting and rejected by others on the side of the road. You can go and do likewise when you show up for someone, help them heal and show them that they matter. When we do this with people on our path, we change their lives in both small and mostly big ways. I realized that the story of the two rivals in my favorite TV show, it hit me so deeply because I could relate. When I was in school, someone I least expected was my Good Samaritan. I was getting bullied for having a speech impediment and talking a little differently. And someone who was not my friend came alongside me, helped me on the side of the road, and instead of joining in on the teasing, they stood up for me and became my friend. And yeah, it changed my life. Who in your path needs your help? Go and do likewise. See you next time, students.